All right. Before we get started, allow us a moment to introduce our Woodland Adult Education presenting team. We have Karen Liu, Cecilia Dracia, and Heidi Pa. Karen?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Tad and Miranda and all of the support from Burlington. And also thank you to Chrissy from CASAS. We appreciate all of you. My name is Karen Liu. I am the principal at Woodland Adult Education. I have actually been in adult education. This is the start of my 22nd year. Started out my career teaching high school English, took some time off to have my family, and fell into the wonderful world of adult education, taught for a few years, and I've basically been in administration now for about 18 years in adult education, and I absolutely love it, and I'm honored to be with all of you here today.
Cecilia.
And my name is Cecilia Dracia. I have been teaching ESL since I was 17 in many different countries and situations. I got my master's in teaching ESL from the University of Hawaii in Manoa. In adult education, I've been teaching for 30 years, and I currently teach 2 beginning low classes at Woodland Adult Education.
Hi, welcome.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Hi, welcome. My name is Heidi Pa Wines, and I have a background, much like Karen, with high school English and Spanish, while I concurrently started teaching adult ed, and then took some time off to have my family and got back into it. I now have a total cumulative experience of 20 years teaching ESL for adult education, both to multi-level and single-level groups, classes ranging from advanced to beginning low. I co-taught with CC the morning class, and I also co-taught a second-level class in the evening this last year. And I am the on-site administrator, along with Karen, for the Burlington English at our school.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Woodland team and participants. If you could introduce yourselves in the chat, providing your name and the program and your location. I see some of you have actually done that, so thank you so much. So feel free to put your information in the chat, and we welcome all of you. All right. So during our time together today, we are honored to share how Woodland Adult and Burlington English have partnered to transform Woodland's ESL program into a technology-rich blended learning community that has really enhanced staff collaboration and instruction, as well as promoting student efficacy and also student measurable gains and performance. That's going to be our time together today. So the Woodland Burlington origin story, I love this story. And Karen, will you share the Woodland Burlington English origin story with us all?
Absolutely, happy to. I have joked with Tad that, you know, serendipity is the way to describe this, but this came about essentially through a very thoughtful and reflective process as myself and the ESL department were working on our self-study in late summer, early fall of 2019 for our, at the time, in-person spring 2020 WASC visit. Part of our goals that we identified for our action plan was to come up with a comprehensive level-wide curriculum that would increase rigor in our instruction, provide for more collaboration, enhance engagement with our students, and ultimately increase learner achievement. So we knew that's what we needed to do because, bless my teachers, they had been working for years just basically cobbling together their own curriculum. We did have a grammar continuum, but as far as something comprehensive and level-wide, we didn't. So we knew that in order to move forward and really just improve our instructional program, we needed to identify a comprehensive curriculum. So that was a set goal, and we actually were looking at what I will call a textbook series. We were preparing for our WASC visit. Again, I was also, it was summertime for those of you who are in consortiums in adult ed and you have to work on your member summary work plan. You're probably very familiar with those. It struck me. I had been hearing a little bit about Burlington English, and I thought, ooh, this might be something interesting to look at. But also in my member work plan, I adopted one of the goals of our consortium, which was to increase the use of technology amongst our students, doing so by Burlington English. So I thought, there's something going on here with this Burlington. I need to find out more about it. So long story short, obviously for those of you, all of you, I think know this, been in a pandemic and we're not able to have our in-person WASC visit. So we kind of did a back burner for our curriculum hunt, but I thought, in the midst of the pandemic, teachers need help. Our students are struggling. What can we do? So I just thought, I am going to start really investigating Burlington. Started looking at the student testimonials, went on the website, and I thought, one of these Wednesday workshops, Wednesday webinars. So I actually went to that. And shortly thereafter, I had this very inviting, welcoming personal email from Tad. And the rest is history, so to speak. That's all it took. He and I met, as is indicated on the slide, in the summer of 2020. He gave me the administrator tour, if you will. I was super excited about it. We had a couple additional meetings, and then we brought the teaching staff on board. And I have to say, it was pretty much love at first sight, if that is possible. But any reservations or concerns that the teachers had about moving to a complete online digital platform, was those fears were completely allayed and set aside. We, as a team, decided to go with our adoption of Burlington. We did so in November of 2020. We purchased 100 seats in December of 2020, and we did implementation in January of 2021. So one of the bright spots for Woodland Adult Ed that did come out of the pandemic was coming across Burlington English and implementing it for our students. And I say for our staff as well. It has been an absolute godsend for our staff with regard to curriculum.
Karen, thank you for sharing that. And as a partner in this process, this experience allowed our Burlington team to really respond directly to Woodland's program outcomes that were identified in that WASC plan, and also to assist in those collaborative strategies to meet the gaps in service and the regional needs of Woodland's consortium as well. So thank you for that, Karen.
Sure.
Yeah, and
So,
our first, did you want to share how we saw them at CASAS, Tad?
sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because Cece and I had actually heard whispers and Burlington being mentioned, and Karen kind of had mentioned it a couple times. And so when we had CASAS back in, I guess it was October, there was a virtual CASAS, and Burlington was one of the exhibitors. So both Cece and I went virtually and met with the team, and they answered all of our questions and gave us kind of an online tour. And we just saw that it was something that was aligned, that it met our WASC requirements, that it had the core curriculum. We had some concerns being something new and looking at change, but we were really impressed. And so we brought that feedback back to the group and back to the teachers, and we were able to join Karen with her enthusiasm for the program.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Appreciate that. All right, the overview of Woodland. Karen, would you mind sharing an overview of Woodland for us, and also the challenges that your program encountered during those early days of the pandemic way back in 2020?
Yes, thank you. So Woodland Adult Education is part of the Woodland Joint Unified School District. We have 12 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 comprehensive high schools, 1 continuation school, and 1 adult school. We serve over 10,000 students. We serve the areas of Woodland, Yolo, Zamora, Knights Landing. Always forget Little Knights Landing. And you can see we've got a slide up that just shows you the difference in student enrollment. In 2019, 2020, once word about the pandemic started spreading, I would say about January, mid-January, when we typically would see an uptick in enrollment after our holiday break. We didn't see that, and we attribute that to fear and the pandemic, the impending pandemic. Having to end program on March 13th also really drastically reduced our numbers. But even so, we did still have pretty good student outcomes. And you can see our enrollment numbers from 2019, 2020. We typically, all program-wide, including our personal enrichment courses, will serve anywhere from 12 to 1,500 students a year. That was not the case this year, obviously. You can see that in our English Learner Acquisition Program, we had 96 students, and for our ASE, ABE, we had 255. So despite that, we did see, even though our ESL numbers were much lower, our retention and our persister rates seemed to be higher. The students that we were serving really did have a vested interest, and online was actually working for them. The city of Woodland itself, we are fortunate in that our community, it is the county seat of Yolo County, and it is very supportive of education overall. We have a very supportive board for our actual adult school program. We just celebrated our graduation on June 9th, and every single one of our board members was in attendance, and they're all very impressed with our school. So that is a huge plus for us. I know some districts, you don't have quite the support that you might need, but we are very fortunate to be very well supported by our district and our community as well. As far as where we are located, for those of you that are familiar with California or are in state, we are just north of the Sacramento International Airport, about 12 miles north. So if you are ever up that way, please feel free to stop by and visit us. But we love to always share and talk about what we are doing, and we like to learn from our fellow adult ed colleagues out there what you're doing so that we can improve our program. When the pandemic started, we were completely in person. We had technology as far as lab time for our ESL classes, but nothing other than Odysseyware in our high school adult independent study program, nothing online for ESL. We really had to do a quick pivot. As I stated, on March 13th, we got word from our governing board. They held a special board meeting that our district was closing. I'm sure many of you were in that same spot of, what do we do now? So with our board, what our district wanted to do was to make sure that there was equity and access for all students. So we basically took about a 3-week break while the board and the district determined, especially in light of special ed, what could we and couldn't we do with regard to online or distance learning. So it was during that time that I was able to work with our departments, our adult secondary and our English learner acquisition departments, and start strategizing. We completely pivoted to Odysseyware. We put all of our students who are in our secondary education programs into Odysseyware, but that still left us with, what are we going to do for ESL or English Learner Acquisition? At this point, I do want to give a huge shout out to CASAS, OTAN, and CalPro, because all of the field support, Cece's nodding, all of the field support, all of the training, everything that they provided, that is truly what kept us going during that initial period, because just the vast amount of technology that was coming our way, it was overwhelming. We were struggling. We were just trying to stay in contact with students, figuring out how to develop lessons, how to present instruction. And to my teachers' credit, they were learning how to set up Google Classroom, learning how to Zoom, use Padlet. Cece could probably provide a lot more detail on everything that they did. But again, during that initial phase, had it not been for all of the field support from our partners, CASAS, OTAN, and CalPro, I don't think we could have been as successful as we were. So that did help us get through that initial period. So I'm sure all of you can agree, it really was a struggle. And I think that is even what pushed us and led us in the direction, again, that goes back to that serendipitous events, things that moved us in the direction of Burlington.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. And, thanks for sharing. And one of the main takeaways is how your Woodland team and the community really locked arms and moved forwards for that one purpose of serving your students.
Right.
So thank you for that overview and your response to the challenges. Much appreciated. Let's move on to what we can offer you and what we offer to Woodland is the wide range of easy to use online solutions for your students who are English language learners and also to respond to their career readiness needs. All of our content and components are completely web-based, accessible on all devices, and all of our diverse courses focus on rigorous academic preparation and also preparation for CASAS assessments, civics knowledge, career readiness, and technology integration at all levels and areas of instruction. So I just wanted to share that with you, and this is what we have to offer you for Burlington English. Let's talk about implementation of Burlington at Woodland Adult. So Karen, would you mind sharing the steps that you took as an administrative level to consider implementing Burlington at Woodland?
Sure. Again, Tad, this goes back to our WAS self-study. And what we did is we created overarching program goals for adult secondary, for English learner acquisition, and then for administration leadership. Our goal for ELA was each English as a second language student will develop ownership of their own learning to become collaborative and self-directed learners. This directly ties into our student learning outcomes. And it was important for us to tie everything back to those student learning outcomes. So in looking at this and then identifying the need to create that comprehensive level-wide curriculum that would, again, enhance instruction, increase rigor in the classroom, promote more student engagement, that is what drove us to start really looking at Burlington. And again, also it is tied to our member work study plan through NOVA as part of our consortium. Also, what prompted us is just looking at the quality of features that Burlington can offer. Tad just reviewed, the components of Burlington for our needs and what we were looking at. And also, again, because of the pandemic, knowing we need to enhance our technology and integrate technology. That was also part of one of our goals, was to integrate more technology into our classrooms, aside from just the lab usage that each of the ELA teachers had. So that was why, again, more reasons why we were looking at Burlington. But mostly for us, it was that initial support that we received, just having that one-on-one with Tad. And as Heidi shared, being at the CATISOL conference and really getting to know about Burlington and learning about it, it made perfect sense for us. I have to tell any of you out there, if you are considering Burlington, it is the greatest choice that you can make. It completely met our needs. It is tied to everything that we are doing. We're doing everything, what I call a linear process, but I'll explain more in a later slide. It is completely circular as well. And just want to make sure, Tad, that I'm covering everything that I have listed for this.
You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. That was it. And again, like I said, it met our needs at the time, and we really did want to have more integration. Also, something else that this will help us with our EL Civics co-ops. For those of you that have the WIOA funding, that was another reason that we knew this would be a good match for us as far as what type of curriculum we did want to implement and adopt.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. And as your Burlington partner, it was always impressive to me, and this is a shout out to your consortium, how they really supported Woodland's WASC self-study and also supported your student acceleration strategies at your program level. Right. So bravo to them. Thank you so much. Heidi and Cece, from a teacher's perspective, what did the implementation process of Burlington look like from your classrooms?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with that. And then we kind of just jumped in with both feet. I think we adopted it in January. We got some training. We started exploring it as teachers on our own time. And then we just said, well, hey, this is great. Let's start using this. And all of the teachers to some extent began using it almost immediately. The Burlington team was very hands-on with the training. We were able to reach out anytime we had a question or a technology issue. They were there to respond. And our staff, the teachers, we also collaborated saying, hey, I found this is working great. Did you know it did this? And so we were sharing amongst ourselves. And of course, Cece and I were team teaching. So we were talking a lot back and forth about what we were doing. And the program, it aligns, I think Karen mentioned this, it aligns with so many things. I didn't have to worry before we adopted this curriculum. We were kind of cobbling things together, taking a little bit from here, taking a little bit from there, trying to make a comprehensive online curriculum out of nothing, and using our resources that we had online to recreate the wheel. But with this, we didn't have to create. We could supplement if we wanted, of course, but the whole package was there. It had all the core lessons. It had vocabulary, grammar, writing portfolios, extension activities. So I just loved it that it was a unified, interconnected program. It tracked the student progress, so I could see if they were working on their own at home. I was able to get feedback. It has a scheduling calendar, so I was able to schedule their homework on the calendar. There's even bilingual resources where they can do the vocabulary. I mean, there were so many great components that once we started using this and kind of jumping in and then taking the little baby steps of, oh, we're going to use this, and then finding more. It was like reading a novel that you couldn't put down, and we just kept turning the pages and getting more excited about it. Cece, do you want to talk about some of your favorite components about it?
Yeah, Heidi just mentioned some of the benefits that we found, and really the decrease in time for prepping, the feeling that we were really teaching what we needed to teach. Those were some of the real benefits that all of us as teachers found. And those were caused by some of our favorite components. But the problem is, when we think of the favorite components, it's almost all of them. The three main components of the program for me are the Burlington core, the EL civics materials, and the CASAS preparation materials. Those three together provide a three-pronged approach to almost any topic or objective that we wanted to teach. In addition, there are the vocabulary practice lessons, which were so wonderful for our beginning low students who needed to learn how to pronounce the words, what the words meant, and they loved the translations, how to spell the words. There was practice in spelling. For the beginning low students, that was probably the best part right there. The more advanced students found that the reading component, the readers, provided challenging materials and provided language in a longer context, similar to the real life and academic situations which these advanced students are preparing for. The readings also provided cultural situations that the teacher used in classroom discussions and that the students used in reflecting on their own lives. Heidi, were there other components that you found interesting?
Yeah, I really liked that it aligned with our objectives. So most recently we did a soft skills objective, and then we did housing in the lower two levels while the upper two levels did banking. And there are, in the core, also in the EL civics portions, there's units on these lessons to support the objectives. Also, it's aligned with the ELPs. A lot of the questions are in a similar format to some of the questions you would see on a CASAS test. So it gives them the practice to kind of see a lifelike realia type of image and answer questions about it. And it's rigorous. It's rigorous without being intimidating or insurmountable. And I just, like you, I like that it has the three prongs. I like to sometimes pick and choose and have a little variety. The students were really pleased with it. I didn't get any negative feedback from my students. So that was super awesome, because I want my students to feel comfortable and successful and feel like they're being challenged and that things are meaningful and motivational to them. And it wasn't negative feedback, but the only challenge was with the beginning low class was at first the technology. And I think everybody experienced that, the technology curve of learning technology when you're teaching 100% virtually. So you can't stand next to somebody and show them click here, click there. You're trying to show them in a virtual way how to access a program. So that was the only little hiccup in the road, but we were able to overcome with lots of persistence. And we're going to talk about how we did that, I think, on a later slide. Another bullet point I think on there is the tips for successful implementation. And I would say if you're considering it and you're thinking, oh, I need to do all this prep and all this planning to learn this program, you don't. I would just say, just jump in, just do it. Just spend some time learning the program, but not a lot. The best way to learn the program is to start using it in your class situations a little bit at a time. I would say as you go through it, just share with each other, encourage each other, the tips and tricks that you've learned. And then also when you're teaching your students how to use it, make sure they know how to access the program, support the students, make sure they know their passwords, make sure they feel confident in navigating the program, share your screen so they can see you navigating the program and logging in. Maybe do some one-on-one virtual visits with the students, checking in individually, monitoring their progress on the student lessons so you can see if they're using it or not. And the ones that aren't using it, I would say, reach out to them, especially initially, and say like, hey, do you know your password? Are you able to log in? What's going on? Just keeping the communication open, especially if your class is 100% virtual. How about your benefits, Cece? What did you like? And what did you see as your benefits?
Well, I think we covered the benefits pretty well. I agree with all of the tips that you just mentioned. Those are all really important things. In helping your students with the technology part, I found it very, very important to know what platform each student was using, whether they were using some kind of computer or if they were using Android or iPhone or a tablet, because actually Burlington looks a little bit different on different platforms. And so once I was able to look at Burlington on the same platform that they were looking at it on, I was able to say, oh, well, what you want is in the upper right-hand corner, you see next to the, and then I was actually able to share my cell phone on our Zoom meeting and show it to them. And by modeling for them how to navigate in amongst the programs really, really helped. In addition, I want to mention it's really important to listen to your students. When they come to you and say, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that, find out why and find out a solution. If you don't know the solution, you can contact the Burlington team and they will help you come up with a solution, and then go back and model that for all of the students, because it is sure that if one student is having enough problems to speak of it, a lot of the other students are having the same problem. So really listen to the students. In Burlington, I feel that the more you know about Burlington, the more effective you can be. After working in Burlington for months, I learned some crucial elements of the CASAS prep materials during one of Daphne's lunch and learn sessions. And then I started to use it more effectively, and I found it a very valuable tool. And the students found it a very valuable tool and were excited to have access to it. I wanted to mention also that for low-level students, I start with those vocabulary lessons I like so much. And then I model the lessons on Zoom before I assign the student lessons for homework. The classroom lessons, which are usually meant for class presentation, I don't do those until after I've introduced everything that they're going to be working on for homework, partially because I'm using a flipped classroom model, and that helps me a lot. It seemed to be very, very effective with my beginning low students. In addition, we found a little component of the vocabulary lessons, which were some additional activities that one could do with them. A little red circular menu in the lower right-hand corner of the vocabulary lessons page that was just wonderful, very helpful for any of our students who were having problems.
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm nodding through. I don't know if you can all see me, but I'm nodding through everything that Cece's saying, and I agree. Knowing what type of technology they are on and listening to them, because sometimes their problems are actually not very big, but they just don't know how to overcome them, and you can either help them or reach out to the team.
Hi, Cece, thanks.
Tad, if I could just jump in here for a moment.
Sure.
Cece has always been our lead teacher, if you will, with regard to creating our EL civics objectives and really working. She's taken the role of working with other department members to develop curriculum. And I know how much time she has spent on planning. And I can attest, after she had spent about 2 weeks in Burlington, I met her in the hallway and she was beaming and she said, Karen, my planning time has been reduced. I cannot tell you how happy I am. So I just want to share that from an administrator standpoint, to know what a difference it has made truly in the lives of my teachers with regard to, from a planning standpoint, that they now have focused planning time and it is not just piecemealing things together. So again, to see the sheer joy and relief on Cece's face was, that made me know we are moving in the right direction with this.
Oh, that's wonderful. Heidi, Cece, and Karen, thank you so much. I was thinking when you were sharing with us, thinking back on the time that we spent with with your teachers, the conversations we had, were always focused on correlations and alignment. And Cece, when you said the 3-prong approach, I was smiling and kind of chuckling because I do remember that conversation. And that really helped us at Burlington to really inform us how to go about training and professional development. So thank you for that, for being so honest with us. And I really wanted to just pause here for a moment to share the diverse ways that Burlington can serve your programs, like we did with, with Woodland Adult. We have on-demand training option for you, so you can learn at your own pace with recorded training sessions. We have virtual, you can actually attend live topic-specific trainings. And of course, we have face-to-face. We can customize an implementation training plan, just like we did with Woodland Adult. Cece mentioned that she attended a couple of my Burlington partner, Daphne Lagios, who's not here with us today. She has Lunch and Learns. These are wonderful opportunities to meet informally with a 30-minute lunch and learn, where we connect with adult educators and explore more deeply specific components of Burlington, just like you had the lunch and learn, Cece, with the CASAS preparation as well. Also, as part of the implementation and ongoing support, we offer best practice checklists and materials to get students started. And these are the exact resources that we used with Woodland during their implementation. And lastly, we have other great resources for teachers and students so they can seamlessly navigate Burlington English content and components. And we also provide video tutorials for students and teachers and other hard copy materials as well. So speaking of professional development, the 2 teachers that we did work closely with at Woodland were Heidi and Cece. And Heidi and Cece, could you share kind of the timeline of our professional development and training collaboration?
Yeah, between October and December of 2020, we got an overview of Burlington from Daphne and Tad. And then they gave us access to Burlington so that we could explore and see what it was like. We were basically looking at this as, is this the program we want to adopt? Is this really going to be sufficient for what we need? But during this time, we were fully involved in teaching our classes under the virtual search for materials every day method. And we were really, really busy. So we didn't get to know it fully. We just looked over and we said, wow, it's got the things we need. Let's go with this. So then in January, when we started teaching with Burlington English, none of us had really seen even half of the materials available at one level, at our own level of Burlington English. So that exploration continued and stretched and is still continuing. We are still looking into it. During the 5 months that we used Burlington, despite the wealth of training opportunities on the Burlington website, most of our training came from exploring in order to find what we could teach. And then we also sent emails to Daphne and Tad asking questions. We used the training videos for the students so that we could see what we might share with the students. We just didn't have enough time to get to know Burlington fully. And that's kind of what Heidi was saying about just jump in and do it, because it certainly worked for us. Heidi.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the team at Burlington was so great, patient and helpful and friendly. Daphne and I were texting sunset pictures one night to each other. I mean, they weren't just trying to like, okay, well, I helped you, goodbye. They were like real people, really willing to help us and go above and beyond. They were available, and the way that they would train us and teach us wasn't like talking down to us, which I don't like. But it was more like, why don't you log in? And then I'll help you figure out where to click. And then you click here. Okay, now what do you see? So she was modeling good teaching in the way that she was teaching us on how we could teach our students in the same manner. I just love their availability, their flexibility, their tutorials, the step-by-step instructions were really helpful. And just overall, I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So much of what I needed as I was exploring the Burlington was there already. So yeah, Karen?
Yes, and as you can tell, the teachers have had a very positive experience. And I want to echo what Heidi said. This is not just, oh, here, you've purchased our curriculum, now go figure it out. The support that we have received from Tad and Daphne, and now in working on this presentation with Miranda, it's just amazing. As Heidi said, they connect with us on a real person level. You know, Tad, I'll share. Tad and I share gardening tips with each other. Heidi shares sunset pictures with Daphne. So it is, you get that personal approach. You really feel like these people are invested. And I know 100% that Tad and Daphne are invested in our success and in my staff at Woodland Adult Education. What we're going to do, you've heard us talk that Cece just mentioned, we didn't have enough time to explore Burlington fully. That was because, as Heidi said, we just did it. We jumped right into it. So we've only scratched the surface of it. So what we're doing, and I hope that this gives you some insight and maybe gives those of you that are still trying to figure out what to do for, if you have a summer session, maybe what to do. So in talking with the department, I made sure that I said, everybody take a deep breath. We are going to do something a little bit different. We've not done it before, but I said, we all need a reset, and you need to have time to really plan and be able to implement and teach Burlington more effectively. I want you to have a good grasp of and knowledge of all of the features, the career exploration, the EL civics component, the novel component. One of our teachers, our level 4 teacher, has really been utilizing the novel piece of this, or the readers, but not all of our other teachers have had the time to explore. So we are really going to, what we're doing is, we are not having our normal summer session this year. Teachers will have office hours for students. We've provided opportunity through Burlington for students to have homework and asynchronous learning. Our students are paired up in study buddy groups. They are also participating in a conversation workshop at our local library. But again, teachers will have office hours at their leisure, either once a week for an hour or every other week, so that they can just do that personal connect and check in. And what we plan to do this summer is have a Burlington deep dive. So we're going to be working with Tad and Daphne to get more hands-on training in these additional areas, the career exploration, the readers, the exam tool piece, even just going over that initial technology piece, so that we can do a better job of that with our students who we will be receiving into our program in the fall. So we look forward to that. We also plan on using summer for curriculum development. In the past, and I'm sure some of your agencies out there are the same way, our teachers are planning or refreshing our EL Civics co-ops at the end of each quarter as they're preparing to launch it for the next quarter. So this summer, in addition to our deep dive into Burlington, staff will be doing curriculum development and really making those co-ops personalized to our students and their needs, but also tying that in to the Burlington features and correlations. So we're very excited. It's something new and different for us. And I will share that initially, when I did ask this of the group, there was a little bit of, Karen, have you kind of lost it because of COVID? And I said, everybody stay with me. Let's talk about this. What do you see as some challenges? And there was that initial concern of, but what about our students and learning loss? And after working with the group and really looking at all the tools that Burlington affords us with regard to instruction, we determined that by assigning Burlington homework to our students and having those brief check-ins and making sure that they did have assignment study buddy type groups, that would mitigate any learning loss. And our students are excited about it. I can already tell you that our level 3 group had already set up a time to meet, obviously adhering to social distancing, but they're going to be having meetings and doing peer coaching with one another throughout summer. And I know Cece has students who are attending that library conversation group. So all of our students are taking ownership. That goes back to, again, that student learning outcome, having them become self-directed learners, collaborative learners. We are starting to see our students do that. And in turn, it's giving my teachers much needed time to actually plan and do curriculum development and have some much needed professional development as well. So we're very excited about our summer not session 2021.
Oh, that's wonderful. Heidi and Cece, I was just thinking that, we appreciate you so much and your teaching team's collaboration, because that really allowed our team to tailor professional development and training specifically for Woodland's needs. And Karen, we definitely look forward to supporting Woodland's continuous improvement plan, SMART goal of ongoing professional development, and we really look forward to that. So thank you all for sharing.
Thank you, Ted.
So we're gonna pause here for a moment. And before we share Woodland's instructional models, we want to ask all of you who are participating in our session. We know that state COVID restrictions have eased up, and we're all anticipating going back into the classroom later this summer or in the fall. So what is your instructional plan going to look like? Is it going to be blended? Is it going to be hybrid? Are you still virtual? Are you in class? So utilizing the chat, what are you all going to be expecting when you go back in the fall? And Miranda, if you could, we'd love to hear what our participants have to say.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Miranda.
It looks like we've got a blended and remote only option. We've got some, Diana Batista, mostly face-to-face, but some online, not sure about hybrid. We've got Heather Sullivan who says both. And we've got remote only. We've got a virtual and in-person. We've got both. Maria Preston with in-person, another both. Vicki Jones, we're going back on campus. Excited exclamation points.
Love it.
Awesome. So it sounds like a really wide variety of mix. Some completely in person, some remote, some virtual, some both. It looks like there's a wide variety here.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. We know that instruction delivery models are going to be diverse. And we're going to take a moment right now. We're going to go back in time. We're going to go back before the pandemic. And Cece, could you share with us Woodland's instructional delivery model before the pandemic?
Well, obviously we weren't online. We were completely on site. We used technology only in the computer lab. Many of our students knew nothing about technology. Before COVID, we had AM classes, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then we had PM classes from 6 to 8:30 every night, 4 days a week. So that was 20 hours a week for the AM classes and 10 hours a week for the PM classes. When COVID hit from July to December, it changed and we cut the hours way back. We only had 2 hours in the morning, 5 days a week. And the evening classes were 2 hours a day, 4 days a week.
Wonderful. So that was
I guess I
before the,
jumped ahead.
no, you're doing fine. You're doing, so that was before the pandemic. You had classroom instruction only with no technology. Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you. And as we had the pandemic, during the pandemic and all the way up to March 2021, Heidi and Cece, can you share Woodland's delivery model during that time?
Yes, I'll start with that. So during the pandemic, when that happened, March 13th, we were speechless.
Shut
We didn't know what to do. We were scrambling. We were taking advantage a lot of the OTAN and other trainings, trying to figure out how are we going to teach on an online learning platform? How are we going to reach our students? Some of our students didn't have internet, didn't have laptops, especially at the lower level. There was a huge technology gap. So we had students on cell phones, tablets, iPads, doing all kinds of things, being overwhelmed by the technology as we were, but we were trying to help them and bring everybody into the classroom virtually. The teachers were using Google Classroom, Remind, Zoom, Google Meet, all kinds of things. And we were trying to create, as teachers, effective, rigorous online curriculum during a pandemic, remotely, virtually, which was very difficult. We were stressed, we were challenged, we were spending a lot of time, me personally, patching, I would say like a scrap quilt, like taking a little bit here, look a little bit there, trying to create something great out of all these scraps of curriculum that wasn't, necessarily aligned comprehensively with our ELPs and the things that we needed to be doing, because I just didn't have time. I was in survival mode. I was able to find resources. I mean, there's great resources out there for speaking, a speaking site online or a vocabulary site online, but I didn't feel like they were balanced or comprehensive. So sometimes I would say, well, tonight we're going to work on conversation. And then I would create some supplemental vocabulary activities to go along with that. So just a lot of extra prep time and a lot of stress trying to create curriculum, which I was happy to do. I love my students. We all know teachers will do that for their students to create effective lessons, but it wasn't the best. We found out with Burlington English that there was, a better solution to this. And that doesn't mean that that's the only curriculum that we use. We do use different things for warm-ups or, but it is our core now.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Cece, what was your experience during the pandemic?
Well, during those months from July of 2020 until December of 2020, and even during the first 3 months of Burlington, we were strictly virtual. We did not see any students at all, except on Zoom. We had so many different platforms we were trying out. We had so many different materials that we were trying out. It was really chaotic, and it was very, very difficult for all of us.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And I know from January to March, our Burlington team, we provided support for teachers and students who would actually hop into the virtual classrooms, getting students started with Burlington, and also assisting teachers with in-class lessons, sharing best practices, etc. But then in March of 2021, you all changed your instructional model. Cece, did you want to share
Sure.
that experience?
Sure. So we had been teaching virtually, and in my class, almost all the students were using cell phones. In some of the other classes, students were using tablets or computers. And so they had, after January, access to Burlington English. In March, we actually started part-time hybrid instruction. And what I mean by part-time is the morning class met 5 days a week. 2 of those days a week, students were welcome to come into the classroom. A few students signed up to be in person. They came into the classroom, and basically they watched me teach a Zoom class in front of them, because with only 2 students in the classroom and 9, 10, 15 students on Zoom, I needed to be able to see what the students on Zoom were doing. I was in front of the computer most of the time. Class times remained essentially the same as before we became hybrid. That is 2.5 hours in the morning, 5 mornings a week, 2 hours in the evening, 4 days a week. And in the evening class, I had more students who needed to come to the in-class portion because they had terrible connection problems. They they couldn't connect via Zoom. So having the hybrid version meant that they could actually participate in class. But this also meant that they had a hard time Zooming the other days of the week. But most of them could get into Burlington, even the other days of the week. They had just enough connection to do something like that, but not bandwidth to do Zoom. So they were able to work on lessons that I sent out. I said, well, this is what we're working on in class, and they worked on it independently. Really, I think Burlington taught us to let the students do as much as they can do independently.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Cece. And I know, looking back on that time in our Burlington team, we knew that there are lots of moving parts, to transitioning to that hybrid learning model. And, we really tried to make ourselves available to all of you to brainstorm, to plan, and to really implement Burlington at all levels and best support your needs. So that was quite the experience, and I think it was quite successful. All right, thank you so much, Cece. So one of the key components of our partnership with Woodland are student outcomes. And Karen, would you mind sharing with us how Woodland monitors program success?
Karen, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Cece. I had to mute, guys, because one of my dogs was acting up. So
That's okay. We want to hear your dog.
we talked about the pitfalls of conducting meetings from home, and that was one of them. Thank you, Cece. So one of the ways that we are measuring our success is through, again, our WASC self-study, and one of the key 2 steps in our action plan. So I'll just read this briefly to you. One of the identified goals was to adopt and implement a comprehensive ELA curriculum to build a foundation between the levels and clearly identify core materials per levels in a structural manner to improve instruction and assist student transition, or what we call leveling up. So throughout our discussion and our reflection for WASC, teachers said we need a way to really help students with that transition process. And we see that in Burlington. So we are really relying on our action plan as a means of measuring that. We will do that through our agendas and notes from meetings, the materials and curriculum that we're reviewing, the documentation and process for the selection of curriculum. You've pretty much heard how Burlington came to be adopted at our school. Obviously, we're going to be looking at our CASAS student outcomes, the measurable skill gains data, also teacher formative and summative assessments. We will also rely on our core performance surveys, that employment wage gain. And as I said, really looking at the outcomes, which we'll get to that in a later slide, but just already with just this surface level implementation that we're doing, we are seeing tremendous gains in our student outcomes and student scores on our CASAS testing. So we look forward to, once we are in more of a full instruction mode and having more students back on campus, with the results that we're seeing right now with just the limited numbers of students we have, it's phenomenal. So we know that we really will start to be able to measure the success of this once we get more students back on campus and really start looking at our WASC action items and using those to measure success with regard to this one specific step to address our key issue.
Oh, Karen, thank you for sharing that. And I know at Woodland, yes,
If there's one other thing that I could share with you, for those of you that might be coming on accreditation. One of the main things, in addition, obviously, to the indicators that a WASC visiting team will look at, because of the pandemic and us having had our visit for spring of 2020 postponed, we did have our virtual visit this past May. It was May 3rd through 5th. My visiting chair shared with me the main thing, in addition to the indicators that the team would be looking at, was they wanted to see, were we able to continue with instruction during a pandemic? And I have to tell you, they were so impressed. Not only were we able to continue with instruction, but we actually enhance and improve instruction and student engagement as a result of adopting new curriculum. So that was something that absolutely, their words were, blew us away, that in addition that you were able to keep students engaged, you did so by adopting a new curriculum and a digital online platform in the midst of a pandemic. So yes, our visiting team was really impressed with what the ESL or ELA department had been able to do with the Burlington implementation.
Well, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And responding to your WASC self-study, I know you all have a local assessment plan. And Cece, would you mind expanding on Woodland's assessment plan and what it includes?
Yeah, sure. We use the CASAS reading tests and the civics objectives to track student progress, just as we did before COVID. That hasn't continued at all, changed at all. We also had a grammar continuum that we used to know what to teach in each level. And we had writing expectations for each level, so that teachers could plan lessons that would lead into the next level and could monitor the students' progress through that process. To check on that, we have an exit test that we wrote within our school for each level that has a writing component. And the writing component has grammar in the rubric, and a listening and speaking component, which also has grammar and vocabulary in the rubric, but it has as well a functional competency, so that we're looking to see whether the student is capable of speaking, listening, and writing at an entry level for the next level of classes. The exit test serves both as a goal for that level and as a way of judging readiness of each student throughout his time in the level.
Just a quick question, Cece. Do you find that the content in Burlington is sufficient for the 4 competencies and grammar?
Yes. I think we all have material that we have taught from, that we like to go to because we know it better. But when I have just used Burlington for a series of lessons or a unit, I have found that it's sufficient. It is particularly strong in building the listening speaking component, because in the past we didn't have any structured instruction of listening speaking. It was just up to the teacher to create some nice activities in the classroom. And so it's really nice to have something that the students can practice at home. In fact, some of my students will practice again and again and again and again and again, and then they'll come in and say, okay, teacher, help me, check. And so they want me to listen to them and see where they might. And that is something that we just didn't have any way of doing before CASAS. Now, at my level, the writing component, I think, could be beefed up a little bit, but writing is something that the teacher has to give an assignment, and then the student has to turn the assignment in. It's pretty much between the student and the teacher anyway. Yeah, in general it is, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cece. And Heidi, when we're talking about measurable success, how are you tracking your student progress in your classes?
Okay, so this graph that you're seeing here is the rough data of my student results. So winter is roughly January to March. We did a CASAS test in March, and then the spring was the remaining month of March until I think we tested at the end of May, beginning of June, whenever we could catch them, because we're testing virtually, which is really difficult. Anyways, so you can see here, the blue are the amount of winter CASAS gains that student made. The red is the spring CASAS gains. And then the yellow is the number of independent student learning, that's SL, Burlington English hours that student did from January, like 12th is when we started the semester. I don't even know if they were able to access it till the end of January, till our last day of class that I looked at was June 4th. So I just counted and did the numbers myself and entered this data. I have a chart where I'm tracking if they're passing the objectives and the CASAS and the exit tests. And I like to keep that data to see what they're doing. So you can see, for example, Norma really took off. She loved having the independent learning practice. And this is a woman with a family, because this is the evening class. So she has a family. She has a job. She works at an assisted living care facility. She comes to class, I would say, almost every night. She rarely misses. And then here you can see she did almost 60 hours, maybe 55-ish of independent student learning. And you can see her CASAS gain for spring was, I can't see the number, more than 10. Let me look, I have it here, 12 points on the CASAS test gain. So yeah, we had some, yeah, if you look at this, it's just incredible to see how they're doing independent work, which is very rare in the tradition of an evening class who has a family who's working and then is coming to class after a long day at work. I have never had success with assigning homework. Coming from a high school background, I tried. Trust me, I tried. I wanted to assign homework and have quizzes on Fridays, and that initially, and that's not where they're at. But here you can see, and I checked actually this week. I checked their June Burlington English hours, and they are using Burlington during the month of June when we're not at school. So yeah, I just thought this was a fun visual to show everybody how successful you can be in using it independently, and also making gains on the CASAS, which we know is important because that's our funding money.
Oh, Heidi, thank you for sharing. And speaking of CASAS and those functional level gains, Cece, this is a great graph of your rough data. Could you explain average functional level gains made by your students?
Yeah, I wanted to comment that Heidi and I were just so bowled over by the numbers we were seeing from our students when they came back with their CASAS test results, their post-test results, that she and I jumped in and did this rough data analysis. Neither of us are data analysis experts, but we wanted to see if our suspicions were correct, that what we remembered of past scores matched what actually happened. And so this is an analysis I did of her evening class. You see the first class there is PM level 2, that's Heidi's class. And I compared the functional level gains from 2019, 2020 to the functional level gains of this year, 2020, 2021. And you can see the drop off of students. She had 99 students registered in the previous year, and then there were only 30 registered in this COVID year. One of the numbers they always give us in these reports are how many paired scores that we have. And we saw a gain here in the paired scores that were, we improved our paired scores, which was really good. But what I really wanted to know is how the students improved in their scores on their tests, because it seemed to me, and these two classes, the AM class below level 1 and the PM class below level 1, these are my classes. And I wanted to see how those students compared to previous students in their improvement. And so what I took was the students who increased by a level, functional level gain in the, this was for the full, actually, yeah, this was for the full year, but it included just the 5 months of Burlington. And what we saw here was a huge increase. The red circled numbers show a difference of how many students who had paired scores increased a level in their scores. So I just was really, really impressed by this, and I give a lot of the credit to Burlington. Heidi thinks it's also partially because the students knew more about how to use computers to answer questions on the CASAS test. Yes, I'm sure technology improvement also helped them attack the CASAS testing, but very, very impressed.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. So you definitely saw students taking more ownership of their learning.
Absolutely.
And I think that's so important in this next graph. You know, student efficacy, persistency are so important. And we know that they're a key component of your WASC action plan. And Heidi, can you share how your students took an active role in their learning and CC as well? The change during the pandemic?
Sure. I mean, like I mentioned when my graph was up on the screen, that when you teach a PM class, traditionally they do not do any homework because they're too busy. They want to learn English, but there's only so many hours in the day and you have to sleep. So I saw about a 30%, not all of them did their assigned work, but 30%, I was like, well, that's a heck of a lot better than 0. I'll take it. This is awesome. And I plan to work on over the summer, like how can I get that number to be even better? Because we were all learning this together. But yeah, and part of the way we did use it is assigned seats. I think Karen kind of briefly mentioned that we had 100 seats. Seat management. So one of the decisions that she made and we made as a team was that we would let them know if you're not using your seat, if you're not taking advantage of your student lesson option, that we're going to give it away to somebody else that needs it. And as teachers, we monitored who was using it, who was making progress, and we reached out to them to say like, hey, do you not have time? What's going on? Are you having technology issues? Did you forget your password? You know, what's the issue? And tried to encourage them. But then if we didn't see any improvement, then we would say, well, you know, we have to give this away to another student who really wants to use it. Attendance was also really good. They were engaged, they liked the program, and they knew that they could get additional support, additional practice when they went home through the student lessons, which I did assign. So I would in the level 2 class, I would teach usually the teacher lesson, sometimes vocabulary, sometimes an extension activity, but I would assign maybe for 3 or 4 days on the virtual calendar, I would provide a link directly to that corresponding student lesson. We also did the same thing in the morning class for the low students that I shared with Cece. We would assign, and she did like a flipped version, which she'll talk about probably in a minute. But
so Heidi, I just had a really quick question.
Yeah.
So do you assign the student lessons as homework? Would that be considered homework?
I did, but Cece did a flipped class, so hers was like pre-work. But yeah, I assigned it as like a homework for afterwards. I would give them 3 or 4 days knowing that they were busy, and we would be covering that same unit for multiple days, so it was fine. But yeah, and if they missed a class, or they weren't able to attend because things happen, they could go online, they could see the lessons, they could catch up, they didn't fall behind, they didn't miss the material because the student lessons they weren't the same, but they were parallel to what the teacher lessons were that we had.
That's good. Thanks,
Cece,
Heidi.
how about anything
Yeah,
else
go
you
ahead.
want to add for the morning class?
Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit and talk about persistency. I think all adult schools suffer from the students who register and then drop out. But at the beginning of the pandemic, they registered and then dropped out because of technological barriers or family and job responsibilities. And we had really low numbers in our classes. When we started Burlington in January, we had by then learned how to help students pass the technological barriers. And so when new students registered, we were able to get them into the class and have them Zoom with us fairly successfully. So persistence increased there as far as classroom attendance. But the standout advantage of Burlington was the fact that the students were able to study as much as they wanted to. If they felt themselves weak, they went ahead and studied more. They repeated lessons, they practiced on Burlington. And this really gave them agency to decide what they wanted to do and to do as much as they wanted to do. Now, we were talking about the flipped model that I used. I simply provided the materials to the students before I was teaching it in class so that they could start that process of learning the vocabulary before they came into class. When I started teaching the vocabulary in the classroom, some of the students had already seen some of it, knew how to pronounce it, knew what that word, how to read that word on the paper. And as the other students saw that studying before we have the lesson helps me understand the lesson better and helps me do better during the lesson, they started doing more. And this table that we see here shows just one small snapshot of what resulted from that. You notice it says that there were 139 students with assigned Burlington English seats. Now, we only had 100 seats. So this represents students also who worked in it for a little while and then maybe dropped out of our program because of a job conflict, or more typically, these were students who we thought might be engaged in our class, and then we didn't really see them in January, and we dropped them out. The 39, we dropped out and put new students in their seats. But during that 5 months, it wasn't a year, we had 1,322 hours and 35 minutes of total usage time from the students who were using this. And this gives us an average usage time per student of 9 hours and 30 minutes. One of my students had 144 hours of work in Burlington. She was an older woman who was alone in her house with the lockdown, and she didn't have a lot to do, and she really wanted to learn English. And so I simply taught her how to access every part of Burlington and said, go for it, do as much as you want. And she did 144 hours.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful, Cece. And you know, integral parts of Burlington are the detailed progress and reports that allow programs just like Woodland and their teachers to track and monitor and measure student progress. And also, I know Woodland, you all did this, you personalized the instruction, you used the data as touch points to provide those interventions. And we know that data really helped you all to guide that classroom instruction. So thank you so much for sharing. So our favorite part of the presentation, right, Karen, is your continuous improvement plan. And one of the things that our Burlington team is so proud of is that we helped to support you and provided some assistance as you created your plan. And can you share a little bit about your CIP process, your SIP process?
Definitely. Again, this just ties back to all of the support that we have received from Burlington. So I essentially reached out to Tad to discuss formulating a SMART goal that would incorporate Burlington English Core. And then he and I chatted about specific action plan items, measurable success, staff and teacher training, and then student onboarding. And in just having this very organic discussion, and Tad being very well versed in our WASC self-study, because he did also provide Burlington language for us with regard to our curriculum implementation or adoption and implementation. So he was very familiar with that. And again, this is going back to that linear path that I talked with you about earlier of how we got to this point. So it was just, again, a very organic chat. We sat and just in, I would say, what, Tad, about an hour, hour and a half, formulated our SIP, one of our goals for our continuous improvement plan. And I'll read it to you. It says, by the end of the 2021 school year, 100% of adult English learner acquisition students will receive instruction utilizing Burlington English digital courseware through online, distance, or blended learning instruction to effectively enhance the delivery and instructional services and improve student outcomes based upon agency performance measures and the Comprehensive Adult Student Assessment System, CASAS, measurable skill gains, MSGs, by 25%. So what we did is, again, we're tying it back to what our WASC identified goal is, also tying it directly to CASAS, showing that we're going to be using it in either a virtual model. We didn't want to lock ourselves in because, again, we're looking at this as, what if we ever did have to go back into a lockdown or a very limited mode? We are set this time. We don't have to scramble and pivot. We know what we need to do. So that's why we included the various options. Also, we know, I've said repeatedly, the distance learning genie is out of the bottle. We cannot put the cork back in. Students, especially a lot of our ESL students, are saying that this works for them. A lot of our moms who childcare was an issue are saying, I can participate in classroom instruction now because I can do it virtually. We have families who share transportation. Maybe they have one car. So they're saying, you know what, this helps me. I can come into class a couple days a week, but I need to do the rest of my instruction remotely. So we wanted to be able to include that and incorporate it into our goal and be able to measure it. So we've got the 25%. I think now, in looking at the results that Cece and Heidi have shared with you, I think we could have probably very well put 50% down, because I believe that we will be seeing goals like that. So some of the supporting strategies that Tad and I worked through, we're just talking about how we came to this, again, back to that WAS self-study, and then how we looked at Burlington, we identified it as our curriculum, and then we purchased it in December, those 100 seats. What will be our measure of success? Our BE student and teacher activity reports, which you've seen just a glimpse, a snapshot of that. Obviously, the need for purchasing additional Burlington English due to increased student enrollment. We know that come fall, August 23rd is when we will start having in-person instruction or a hybrid model, that we will have to purchase additional seats before then, because as you see, we are already maxed out on our seats. Our student retention rates, we're already seeing that as a measurable measure of success, but we will continue to rely on that. And then also our increased learner outcomes and measurable skill gains. Again, as we've discussed for CASAS, we listed our staff who will be accountable for that. You'll see that we've got our BE customer managers listed in there because they are our educational partners. We will be relying heavily on Tad and Daphne as we go through this next school year. We listed our due dates, and then also the support that we're getting from the state as well as from CDE. So again, just a huge thank you to Tad for working through this. It was, at first it was a little bit, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it was just different for those of you that do have the WIOA funding and the WIOA grant. we've not had this. We've had our technology plan and our professional development plan. So having this continuous improvement plan this year, it was challenging to figure out, okay, what do we want to do? And again, for me and our entire staff, we're looking this as it's all coming full circle. It's a cycle of continuous improvement. We identify our goals, what we want to improve. We implement the strategies to be able to do that. We're going to evaluate our success and then obviously celebrate our success, because it is exciting when you see the fruits of your labor just start to come to fruition. And it's like, oh, this is working. What an impact it's making on staff and students. And then we'll decide our next steps. So this is how we're going to use our WAS self-study and our continuous improvement plan as part of our measures for program success for the coming school year.
Thanks, Karen. It was such an honor to be a part of the SIP process. And I think it's really laid a great foundation as we, move forward together to continue to work together and achieve that SMART goal that's on your SIP plan. So thanks for allowing us to be part of the process.
Thank you.
All right. So Karen, Cece, Heidi, it's been such a wonderful experience being your partners, but I think we've just gotten started, right? So Karen, could you share a little bit about next steps? What's
Sure.
kind of in the future plans for Woodland and Burlington?
Yes, well, as I told you, we are doing a completely different approach to our summer session this year. Obviously, having the deep dive into Burlington, and just looking forward to working more closely with Tad and Daphne through this process. But as far as ongoing, we plan to continue to have ongoing professional development and training throughout the year. Teachers will be relying on the Lunch and Learns and the Wednesday webinars. If you have not attended one of the Wednesday webinars, I encourage you to do so. Very, very informative. Lots of useful information and takeaways come from those. We plan to continue working with our Spanish radio partners. We advertise and partner with La Ranchera and Laser, so we will continue to do that. Obviously, word of mouth is our best outreach, so we'll rely on that. We also will do our community-based organizations and also promoting at our local library, our churches, our mosques, our synagogues. We typically every year send information packets to all of our elementary, high school, and middle school and continuation sites. But what we're going to do this year is really rebrand, if you will, and talk about this new way to learn English. We really want to promote how easy it is to learn English, using Burlington English. So that's really important that we want to be able to do. And again, just expand our partnership with Burlington, because like I stated earlier, I am so excited to see the results of all of this effort and hard work once we are back into a more normal structure and normal routine. I'm really, really excited. I think my own staff is probably, they're like, oh, Karen, you keep telling us this, but it's true. I am so excited, especially after the past 17 months that we've all been through and we've all experienced. Just the hope of looking forward to this next school year, of having a return to somewhat normalcy and having this wonderful curriculum and this wonderful partnership with Burlington to move us forward for staff and students. I am just absolutely over the moon and excited about it.
Yeah, I definitely concur. And I think, on Burlington's end to build our partnership, we really want to continue to provide that scheduled professional development, ongoing support, and also helping align Woodland's IET, IELCE, and Pathways courses with Burlington English, correlation guides or alignment guides to help expand your program.
Right.
Utilizing all components of Burlington, especially the CASAS preparation for maximum effectiveness. And of course, supporting Woodland's continuous improvement plan and also WASC as well. So much to look forward to, right?
And Tad, like you said, expanding, that is one of our recommendations from our WAS self-study. And as a school, we had already determined that we did need to start offering CTE courses and eventually pathways. So we look forward to having this component readily available to us. We are already partnering with Yolo County Office of Education and Woodland Community College. And something very exciting that happened pre-pandemic, our level 4 English learner acquisition teacher had partnered with Woodland Community College and their English department. And all of our teachers had been working in conjunction with teachers from or instructors from Woodland Community College to build a bridge, if you will, for students to where we had better transition. Or if a student was registering at Woodland Community College and wasn't quite ready for college class, Woodland Community College would refer that student to our program. So we also look forward to really kind of shoring up that bridge and bringing it back into place once we're able to have more in-person meetings and really reconnect with them. And we see Burlington English with the IET and Career Pathways course offering as being a huge component in that as well.
Oh my goodness, so much wonderful things to look forward to. And we thank you so much, Karen and Woodland team.
And can I throw out one question? I was just going to say, I know we're right at time, but I think a lot of the questions got answered in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone. And thank you, Cece, for going through and answering. There was one that popped up earlier on, and the question was, how will Woodland use Burlington when they return to in-person learning? Will students have devices in class? So I wonder if you guys can address that. Yeah.
Absolutely. We did purchase, thinking ahead, because throughout the pandemic, I kept looking ahead to when we can get back to normal. And I knew the way our previous setup to where the teachers were utilizing our computer lab, it really limited and restricted what they could do with their students. You know, they would maybe get 2 hours in the morning, or what, Cece, what was it, 4 hours each week, I think, for morning class. It really was restrictive.
Yeah, we had 2 days a week, 2 mornings a week.
Right. And so what I said is, we need to have portable labs in all of the classrooms. So using CAPE funds as well as WIOA funds, I purchased Chromebooks with charging stations for each of our classrooms. So now we will have access. Essentially, each classroom is its own lab. So there will not be a problem. When students come back, we can still serve students virtually, and students in class will have their own assigned Chromebook to work on while they're in class. Yeah, teachers were very excited about that. And once students found out, they too are really, really excited.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate that. Thanks for taking the time. Well, everyone, we're right on the end of our time together, and hopefully we responded to your questions. But if you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to Karen, Cecilia, Heidi, or me at any time. Here's our contact information. It was truly an honor to spend time with you, and thank you for all that you are doing as adult education teachers for your learners. And please have a wonderful and safe summer. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.